Our topic today is the great Canadian workplace. Build your way to success. Whether you're already here, working in Canada, or planning to work here, it's important to know some of the ways that the work environment in Canada is different from other places. For instance, places where you're working in outside of Canada. Being aware of them and then using that knowledge to ensure that you're equipped to succeed in the career you want. That is one of the goals for today's webinar. Please welcome Deirdre Millen.
Thank you so much for having us here today. So I'm here to talk to you about networking. Networking is the way that Canadians find employment, and it's a concept or a practice that isn't always used in other countries. It's a way of reaching out and connecting to other people, and we're going to talk in depth about what we mean when we say the word networking. What is it? How do you do it? I want to talk to you about where the jobs are. In Canada, if you were to take a look at every place where jobs were advertised, and by that I mean online like LinkedIn or Workopolis or Indeed, or even in a newspaper or a magazine or on a company's website, if you took a look at all the jobs that exist, you would be surprised to know that only 20% of all jobs possible are advertised. So that's why we want to highlight the 20%. Only 20% of all jobs are advertised. That means the other 80% are what we call the so-called hidden job market. And if you've seen that expression online or spoken about, and you're wondering what's the hidden job market, the hidden job market are the jobs that are never posted, never written down, never advertised in any way. So that means when you're looking, if you're only looking at advertised jobs, you're missing 80% of the jobs that are available. So think about all the time that you spend looking for work. If you're looking for work full-time, you should only be spending 20% of your job search time on externally posted jobs because they only represent 20% of the total market. And this is what most people do. They say, oh, I'm looking for work because I'm online and I'm submitting resumes virtually or through email. But really what you need to be doing is the task that most people don't like, which is networking, because that's the uncomfortable part. That's going out there and meeting quote-unquote strangers. So here's the reason why employers do not advertise. Clients ask me this all the time. Well, why aren't employers advertising? Well, first of all, it costs them money. Even to post on a site like LinkedIn costs some money. The other thing is it's very time consuming. It brings in a lot of inappropriate applicants. Quick little example, at ACCESS Employment, we posted a position for an admin person. We got over 500 applications. Now somebody has to sit and go through all those applications. Employers instead turn to their personal and professional networks as the source for potential candidates. And that's as simple as them going around going, hey, do you know anybody who you think would be good for this position we have coming up? That's what they're doing. They're networking within their agencies. Here's how employers do find their candidates. They get referrals from employees, from their colleagues, from their friends, from their family, and through networking. They'll also look at resumes they already have on file, or they may even look at people that are interning or volunteering at their organization. Here are the 4 ways that we access the hidden job market. We do it through networking, we do it through company research, we do it through what's called cold contacting, and we'll define that in a minute or two, and also through what's called an informational interview, which is different than a job interview. So what is networking? Well, it's a 2-way process and a mutually beneficial exchange of information. It's you sitting down and talking with someone who works in the same field as you and finding out more about what the work life is like in Canada in that field. You use it to identify and contact people, letting them know about your qualifications and your availability. So for instance, Gallic and I both work with new Canadians. So we might sit and have coffee and talk about what kinds of obstacles do we see, what kinds of patterns are we seeing, and we're sharing information about our working world. He might learn a little something from me. I would certainly learn something from him. That's what you're doing when you're having an informational interview. What does networking do? Well, it allows you to meet people who are connected to the hidden job market and connect with people who are connected. It's your opportunity to ask for advice and for information from people in the industry. Here's some other benefits. It improves your communication skills. The more often I go and speak to somebody and tell them about what I'm interested in doing, the more comfortable I'm going to get introducing myself, talking about the parts of the business that interest me, and presenting myself as a future candidate in waiting. If I'm having a chat with Gallic and he's impressed with how I come across, and maybe a position comes up here at WES, he might consider me for a future position. And it helps me gain confidence when speaking in a professional context. And I get to meet people with similar backgrounds and similar interests. How do I find those people? Well, it all comes down to research. And anybody who knows the field, it's all about the research. It's research, research, research. And you do that through the internet, which is a wonderful tool. You're looking for companies that are doing the kinds of work that you also have done. You're looking for similar companies that produce the same kind of products or whatever it is that you do back home. You're looking for the similar versions here in Canada. A lot of the websites, if you research a company, they'll have a human resources page, and they'll even detail what the hiring process is. Use the company directory on the internet to identify who's doing the hiring. Here's another small tip, but really helpful. Over 80% of all jobs are created by small to medium-sized businesses, and that's defined in Canada as a company with 500 employees or less. That's a medium size, and small is 100 or less. Most people, when they think, oh, I want to work in Canada, or I want to work at a bank or wherever, they think of the big six. They think of the big companies first because they see those are the ones that they see online, or when they're reading the newspaper, they see the big companies. But think about it. The big companies really are as big as they're going to get. The growth and the opportunity are in the SMEs, the small to medium-sized businesses. Here's a website that you can go to. It's called Scott's Directory, so www.scottsinfo.com. This is a directory of all employers in Canada. It's a searchable database. There is a monthly fee attached to this service, but it's worth it because you can type in where you're going to Canada. You can type in Halifax, information technology companies, and all the information technology companies in Halifax will pop up. And not only will you get the name of the company, you'll also get the name of people who work there, which is great because now you can look those people up on LinkedIn and you can reach out to them through LinkedIn. You can join the same groups that they belong to on LinkedIn, and you can see what their career patterns are. This slide, we're talking about cold contacting, which is what we're suggesting you do when you reach out to somebody through LinkedIn. There's two kinds of contacts. There's a cold contact, which is someone who you do not know at all. That's why it's called cold. A warm contact is someone who you know someone in common. For instance, if I wanted to connect with somebody at WES, I actually know someone who works at WES now, and I could say, oh, Gallic, would you mind introducing me to Sarah or Marcus or any of the other people who work here? And he would say, hopefully, if he liked me and he thought we had a good relationship, he'd say yes. The warm contact is the easiest one to work with because you feel like you know someone in common. These are tips that we wanted to share with you when you're leaving phone messages, because when you're reaching out to people, whether you know somebody in common or not, most likely you're going to be calling them by phone, but you could also, of course, approach them by email or in mail or however it is that you're reaching out. But on the telephone, we want you to remember that the listener cannot see you. The listener may not know you, and you want to make a good first impression. And the listener, when they're listening to your message or even listening to you live and in person, they may want to take notes. So you're going to have to go against your instincts and speak a little bit slowly. When we're leaving messages or speaking to someone for the first time and we're nervous, the temptation is to speak very quickly. Resist the temptation and speak clearly and slowly. So don't talk too soft. Don't speak too quickly. Pause, check and see if the other person understands what you're saying. Here's another tip. Leave yourself a phone message. Have you ever done that? Leave yourself a phone message and see how you sound. So if you've got a standard script, and the other thing is, of course, write out your script, at least in point form. Hi Gallic, I'm calling today. Our mutual friend Sarah suggested I give you a call. I'm really interested in learning about the marketplace for new Canadians. I'm wondering if I can have 15 or 20 minutes of your time. I would be available to come and meet with you on a Tuesday or a Thursday. Please call me back at the following number. And always use the numbers slowly. I'm at 416. Leave your phone number slow, right? People always whip through that phone number, and then you can't call them back without seeing the number. So, yeah.
No? I also wanted to add to your great points there, Deirdre, also to spell out the day and the date. Is that important as well?
Yeah, that can be,
yeah?
Absolutely. Yeah.
To be like, so hi, this is Gallic. It's hi Deirdre, this is Gallic. It's November 24th, just after 10 in the morning, and then with your message, right?
In fact, you just reminded me, sometimes even spelling out your name can be helpful. People think I'm Judy all the time. When I leave my message, they think Deirdre is Judy. They hear it, right? Because you're in a rush or whatever. So I often suggest that people also spell their names. But always, if you have the point, if you know someone in common, you mention that first. Sarah suggested I give you a call. Gallic suggested I give you a call. The informational interview. Most people, when they think of an interview, they think, oh, a job interview. No. An informational interview is your opportunity to go out there and meet people. And as I was mentioning earlier, you're presenting yourself as a future candidate in waiting. So I have a client, he's doing an informational interview with Ipsos Reid, which is a researching company. He's having coffee with a former colleague of mine, and they're having an informational interview. They're meeting at the coffee shop downstairs. It's not a job interview. There is no job per se. But if my client makes a good impression on Friday, he will be considered for future opportunities that are coming up. That's what an informational interview is all about. You're finding out your best source for information. So not only is my friend hoping to get a job at Ipsos, he's also going to be saying what other companies are doing well right now and what kinds of positions are they hiring for. Where's the growth in the industry? What big projects or grants or money has come through the pipe, and who's doing well? So if he's really on the ball, he'll get the names of one or two other people, and he'll say, oh, I've really enjoyed meeting with you today here at Ipsos. Who else should I be speaking to? And now one name has become three, right? That's what you want to do. You're always growing your database of contacts. And you're asking questions that you've prepared in advance. You go into that interview with 4 to 5 questions. In fact, sometimes they'll even ask you to email the questions in advance so that the person who is doing the informational interview is prepared. The great thing about the internet and LinkedIn is now you will know that person very, very well before you sit down. You'll know who they are, what their background is, where they went to school, how long they've been in their current role. So you can jump right in and really start to learn about where the jobs are in the industry when you sit down and do an informational interview. Once you're here, you can be doing a lot of your research ahead of time. This is all stuff that you can be working on right now. In fact, I would encourage everybody to come up with a list of 10 to 20 employers that you want to meet with. Do your research now. You can certainly do it while you're overseas. You're also tapping into your existing networks now and saying to people you know in India or Turkey or wherever you are, hey, do you know anybody in Canada who does this kind of work? I'm interested in banking. I'm interested in pharmaceuticals, whatever your background is. And you're trying to find those connections. Also, get your LinkedIn profile in great shape. Get your recommendations now while you have a current relationship with your employer. So on this slide, we're showing you other ways to network. Co-ops and intern placements, we get a lot of questions around this. One of the organizations that we recommend is careeredge.com, which is listed on the slide. An intern placement can be paid or unpaid. Both are common in Canada, if you will. And it's a great way to get yourself over the quote-unquote Canadian experience hump, because you will gain Canadian experience when you do a co-op or an intern placement. Mentors. What is a mentor? A mentor is someone who has more experience than you working in your field, and they're there to help you and guide you in your job search. And so we recommend the mentoringpartnership.com for that. Volunteering, a fantastic way to network and get to know people. There's 2 websites that we direct people to. Here in Toronto, we have volunteertoronto.ca, which is a searchable database of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of opportunities to volunteer. If you want to work with children or finance or whatever, you just type in whatever you're looking for and the positions pop up. Charity Village is across Canada, so if you're coming outside of the Greater Toronto Area, I encourage you to go to Charity Village. And then for bridging programs in Ontario, there's citizenshipgov.on, which offers bridging programs. The idea of a bridging program is that you are already a professional. You work as a doctor, as a financial professional, as an engineer. What you don't know how to do is be that kind of a professional here in Canada. So the program acts as a bridge between your home country and Canada. And bridging programs teach you how to look for work in your field in Canada. I'd also like to talk to you a little bit about an online bridging program that is being offered at ACCESS. This is new. And it is job search support and networking opportunities before you land in Canada. It's free of charge, and it's for people with experience in the following areas of expertise. So we're seeking specifically people with a background in engineering, finance, human resources, information technology, sales and marketing, and supply chain. We're one of the very few online bridging programs that is sector specific, and you can start right away. Well, here's our little success story. This gentleman is Tala. He's from Pakistan. He was one of our first clients to go through the online platform. He completed Canadian Employment Connections with ACCESS, and within 6 weeks of landing, he received 2 job offers and is now working as an account manager at RBC. And his quote is, "By the time I landed, nothing was shocking for me. I didn't experience a culture shock or job market surprise because I was so well informed." This was a great client, really a lovely gentleman to work with. The online platform, when I say that, what I mean is there's about 30-40 hours of material. We teach you how to find work in your field. We teach you about what a Canadian resume looks like. We teach you about the business culture. And that's something that Rebecca's going to be talking about in a minute, because you need to know what the landscape is like of where you're going into. And we provide online consultation, virtual, that you can connect with before you even arrive.
Now, handing things over to Ms. Rebecca Lee.
Let's define what workplace culture is. The word culture is really thrown around quite a bit these days, and it's great to just have some definitions with us today. So workplace culture is the unique style in which members of an organization communicate, behave, and interact. I was actually at a conference last week, and there was a definition that I really wanted to quote. The quotation was, "Culture is a way of life of a group of people, the behaviors, beliefs, values, and symbols that they accept, and generally without thinking about them." So it's things that you do without thinking. That is workplace culture in general. And then let's talk about what is the Canadian workplace culture, and that's what we are going to talk about today. So the Canadian workplace culture is influenced by the underlying beliefs and values of a larger national culture. It is important to understand the workplace culture so that you can interact with your colleagues and managers effectively. By understanding the workplace culture, you will also understand how decisions are made and how things get done, and in turn be successful in the workplace. So there are many expected norms and unspoken rules in the Canadian workplace. Today we'll be discussing the topics around hierarchy and equality in the workplace. We will then share some resources on how you can learn more about other aspects of the Canadian workplace culture at the end of this webinar. So workplace culture in Canada, what does that mean? So in general, the Canadian workplace culture leans towards individualism and equality, and we will go into that in greater detail later. As an individual, employees are expected in Canada to solve their own problems, have leadership skills, no matter what level you are in the organization, voice your opinion, and ask questions, even to your manager. For example, it is okay for you to get up to set up a meeting with your manager and even go for coffee or even go to their office if you have any questions about your deliverables. It is seen as being proactive, and it is a very positive trait. So as an individual, it's also encouraged for you to initiate conversations about work projects and teams around you. So it's okay to talk to someone in the hall about stuff. You can also express your unique identity, skills, and strengths that may be useful. In a lot of workplaces, it may be better to conform to the style of dress or have the same views, but people are encouraged to have their unique identity and ideas. It makes you interesting. Another thing is also to share your successes. A lot of times we tend to hide and we just want to wait for our managers to share about how great we are. But it's really okay just to share your successes with your colleagues and also your manager as well in a very respectful way. Just looking at the team as well, it's very important to have great teamwork in Canada. That means being able to be open to other people's ideas, sharing your own, and also being open to criticism as well. And also just really focusing on collaborating with colleagues and also working as a team together to finish your task together. And that's how you'll find success. So as we mentioned earlier in this section, the Canadian workplace leans towards an equality structure versus a structure of hierarchy. Let's compare. So the first structure you see here is a very nice triangle, and we'll call that the hierarchy workplace. So that's a system or organization in which people or groups are ranked one above another according to status or authority. So let's talk about an example of that. So in a hierarchical workplace, which could occur in Canada as well, everyone addresses their managers as sir or madam. Employees are assigned tasks by their manager and don't dare to question or share their thoughts. There is an element of fear. They also do not have any opportunities to meet with their VP or their CEO. So you're just supposed to work. In a workplace of equality, you will see equality demonstrated in a lot of different ways in the Canadian workplace. The definition would be a state of affairs in which all people within society have equal rights, status, and opportunities. So in this workplace, all employees are treated the same way and follow the same rules regardless of their position in the organization. For example, men and women are treated the same way in the Canadian workplace. In many places, a woman leader is very common. Leadership opportunities are available for everyone, as long as they have the right skill sets and the soft skills. Everyone is encouraged to share ideas and feedback, regardless of rank. Discrimination and harassment based on age, gender, religion, physical appearance, and so on are not tolerated. So an example of an equality-based workplace would be you would address your manager and colleagues by their first name. Your manager would have an open door policy, which we'll talk about later, and encourages feedback and ideas from staff members. Top management, like your CEO, may even chat with you in the elevator and ask you about your family.
And just a quick recognition, perhaps, for our own respective workplaces. I know for WES, our international office in New York, our overall top CEO is a woman. And I believe that's the same case with ACCESS Employment as well.
So let's do a quick comparison between the two. So we talked about this already. So in the hierarchy workplace, you are tending to keep your views and ideas to yourself. Authorities seldom challenge, roles are rigid, and there is a very closed door environment. In an equality workplace, you are encouraged to share your ideas and views. It's a very progressive workplace. It's a very flat culture, or you can say an open door policy, where you can go and speak to anybody. And there are self-determined roles as well. So let's just quickly talk about how do you become successful in the Canadian workplace. A lot of you may be asking, so how do I become a manager? How do I move up the ranks? So one of the ways is to have a really good relationship with your manager, and that's managing your manager's expectations. Your relationship with your manager is a negotiated relationship. So you should be taking the opportunity to discuss what your boundaries are, what their management style is like, and the delivery of feedback. You also need to understand what your manager can and cannot help you with. For example, they probably won't be able to buy you lunch or walk your dog. Thinking about the situation first before you automatically respond yes or no is very important. There's something in the Canadian workplace called burnout, and that means that you're just working too much and saying yes to everything. Sometimes it's good to ask questions as well, just to know what your priorities are, and as we mentioned, it is okay to ask questions to your manager. Lastly, you want to set up regular meetings as a checkpoint for feedback, and share updates and ask questions. So for example, if you're having a communication issue, misunderstanding with a very difficult manager, and I'm sure we're very familiar with those difficult managers, and if it keeps happening, it's really okay to pull them aside after a meeting or ask them privately if you can speak to them and voice your concerns respectfully. It is a proactive way to try to improve your working relationship instead of just quitting your job. Another way is just to inspire your manager's confidence and make them feel good. Management is very hard work, and you want to demonstrate coachability. You want to be open to feedback. You want to be flexible. And you also want to check in with your manager often because he or she might be too busy to check in with you. So just on the topic of how do you build your brand or your reputation in the Canadian workplace culture. So status in the Canadian workplace is achieved through education, competency, reliability, so don't be late, hard work, and also additional education as well. Your social status should have no impact on how you get promoted at work. Obviously, there are some exceptions to that, but in general, that is the case in Canada. And if you want people to respect you, you do have to earn it. You have to work hard. If you want a promotion, you have to earn it. So it is also important to build strong relationships with both management and your colleagues, in addition to being competent at work. You should also practice sharing your successes, as we mentioned earlier, so that your name does come to mind when it's time for promotions to be considered. Some of you might be asking, what else can I do to learn more about the Canadian business culture? So one of them is our best friend, Google. So you can Google News, you can look up business, lifestyle, economy. You can also follow companies on social media as well. Twitter and LinkedIn are very, very popular, and lots of companies post updates on themselves as well there. And speak to trusted friends and past colleagues that are working in Canada. No one is better than to tell you the truth than someone that's already been there. Let's just talk a little bit more about other resources for yourself. So as Deirdre mentioned, there is the Canadian Employment Connections program, which really talks about the Canadian business culture, and it will really help you prepare when you come to Canada. Also attending the networking events that we run as well at ACCESS, and also visit our Job Search Center for any job search articles, webinars, games, videos, just to really help you learn more about the Canadian workplace culture. And here are just some additional resources that we want to put up on the screen. So we have CanPrep, PrepCan, and Settlement online pre-arrival programs that can really help you do your job search as well. This is our contact information. In addition to the Canadian Employment Connections website and email address that Deirdre has pointed out, you can also follow us on Twitter and also our website as well as our LinkedIn group as well. So please do stay in touch.
So first question. I think it's very interesting because, and we have cameras, so maybe we can demonstrate an answer as well. When going to shake hands, who should extend their hand first? Is there an etiquette? Anyone? Deirdre? Since
I don't think there is an etiquette around this. No. And it's not like it's more important if you do it first. There's no right or wrong way, I don't think, on this one. So it's just, hi, Rebecca, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, Deirdre.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think it's really just, if you're seeing someone in a networking event and you approach them first, then it's okay to extend your hand. But if it's an interview, usually the employer does extend their hand first. But other than that, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, okay, great, thank you.
I would say, just to add a point to that, for those of you who have really strong grips, to not crush the other person's hands when you're shaking their hands. Be gentle, be firm, but also be gentle. I think that's a good balance to strike.
And for women, please do not have the dead fish handshake as well. Yeah. That is limp and cold.
Can you demonstrate the dead fish? Can you see this? Okay, we're seeing this. Okay, good to know. Good to know. All right. The next question is, these amazing programs that you spoke about throughout this webinar, and just a reminder for our audience, all of these links, if you were worried about frantically copying them down as they were presented on screen, we will be sharing them in a PDF of the slide deck and everything. So don't worry, you will receive follow-up emails, hopefully very soon. We've been kind of lagging behind for the past few webinars, but it's only because we want to give the best product possible. But anyways, we will be following up with all of our registrations, our attendees and everyone. with a slide deck and everything so that they can download and click on the links and peruse them or use them. So the question here is, are the programs that you spoke about only for those people who are living outside of Canada for access employment?
No. So most of our clients actually live here. We serve over 16,000 people every year. We have 5 offices across the Greater Toronto area, so Mississauga, Scarborough, North York, Brampton. What's new for us is this online service that we're offering, and the goal of the online service is to narrow or close the gap between people landing and finding employment. I think that answers the question. Yeah.
Next question relates to networking. How do you network when you don't know anyone in Canada?
Well, we talked about that in our little presentation, didn't we? So you're researching, you're finding people through Scott's Directory and LinkedIn. You're also tapping your existing network where you are now, and you're asking, hey, do you know anybody who lives in Canada? And you're asking for names. And don't just ask the tried and true, ask everybody. Almost the new rule of networking is, if I'm 3 feet away from you, I should be asking you. I've even had clients who've networked just commuting on the bus, coming into to class. Anybody and everybody.
Yeah. And just to add to that, if you're overseas, I don't know if you've used the most powerful tool in the world. It's called LinkedIn. And there is actually an alumni button there. If we do have future LinkedIn workshops, I can show you that. But for this one, there is a button there where you can actually search your alumni. So if you went to a very great, say, MBA school in Bangladesh, you can actually search who is in your school that's currently living in Canada. And you can reach out to them on LinkedIn as well. And also attending some of our online events as well. Even if you know 1 or 2 employers, even if it's online, you can have 2 people and they can connect you with 2 or 3 other people. So all you need is just really 1 or 2 to start.
So one of the themes that I'm catching from your answers is to not let the fact that you don't know anyone hold you back. And it's all about your mindset, having a very proactive attitude about everything, and research. So there's a lot of preparation involved. And finally, there is a saying in North America, or I don't know, it's probably everywhere else around the world as well, you gotta network to get work. Am I right?
Yes, yes, it's true.
Okay. All right. So the next question is interesting because we actually do have an article about this that our colleague Shauna Marie wrote on this very topic, but I think it's good to discuss this as well. How do we address the hiring person in an email communication when we don't know their gender? How do we address the title aspect? Mr., Mrs., Miss, all of that stuff. Very interesting question. So before I go any further, I will let you take a stab at it.
Sure. So there are many ways to address the hiring manager. You can even say, dear hiring manager. That's completely okay. You can say, dear hiring committee. If you actually want to do research, there's something called Google. And you can also Google their name and find out if they are male or female. Most people do have an online profile if they're a hiring manager in Canada.
On LinkedIn.
Or on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So you don't have a picture, you can probably find out somehow, somewhere, if the name Sarah, it's a male or female.
And also, don't use Mr. or Mrs. Just go, dear Deirdre Millen. Like if you didn't know Deirdre was a girl's name, just dear Deirdre Millen. And you've avoided the gender issue completely.
No one can be too careful these days. And again, we do have an article on this very topic. So if you go to our WES Advisor blog, just Google search WES Advisor blog, the first result, and when you go through it, there should be an article about it. We will also be sharing it in our upcoming newsletter, so keep an eye out for that. The next question is interesting as well. It's a very scenario-based question, which I love because it's very specific. And it says, how do I handle follow-up communication when an employer arranges a meeting time with me, but then they don't actually get back to me?
All right. So
we're hitting at you from all angles.
if they do not come back to you. I'm not sure if you're in Canada or you are overseas, but if you are in Canada, it's okay after 2 weeks to send a follow-up email. And then if they don't get back to you, it's okay to give them a call. And if they don't get back to you then, maybe give one more call, and then after that, just give up. So what I mean by give up is move on to the next contact. Unless it's a one-man company, I really think that there'll be other resources. And don't focus on just the senior person. You might want to look at their assistant as well. The point is to make a connection.
And this is, again, the reason why it's important to have multiple contacts. You're not just putting all of your hopes on one person. The more networking you do, the more contacts you have. If you lose one or two, it's not so bad if you know you already have 50 on the go.
And don't take it personally if they don't get back to you. Sometimes they're just simply busy, so it's not just you, it's them.
Yeah, it's very busy.
Very on point. Thank you. Just want to take one final question on the topic of networking, and then we'll move on to the workplace side of our webinar. And it's an interesting question that I find also very applicable to many different job applicants. Does having a prepared script make a bad impression on the person on the other end?
So we're talking about having a prepared script when you introduce yourself, like,
or when you're on the telephone, when you're meeting someone, when you're like all of those things. Right?
Okay, so what we coach our clients to do is to start with a prepared script. Yes, so yes, write it out, draft it out, have it in point form, but you want to get to the point where it doesn't sound rehearsed, right? So if you're sitting there and you're just reading a script, yes, that sounds terrible. Don't do that. But do write a script and prepare it and practice it over and over again. So what I always recommend with my clients is start by practicing with your friends, with your family, with your spouse, with your kids. And then start practicing your script on people that make you feel a little bit uncomfortable, like your uncle who's always grouchy, or people who don't really matter.
My brother.
Your brother, okay. And then work your way up to using it with a stranger and with just casual contacts at a party or wherever you gather and meet with people. And then you try it on an employer. So if you want, you can sort of work your way up to the really important meeting when you're meeting somebody for the first time, a potential employer. But the expression I like to use is practice when it doesn't count. In other words, practice all the time so that when it comes to the big moment, it's seamless and it won't sound like it's scripted, and it will be completely natural.
The other element that I also picked up from what you just said is also stepping out of your comfort zone.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Looking for work means constantly stepping outside of your comfort zone. And the more you do it, the more comfortable you'll be being outside of your comfort zone.
Moving on to now workplace. This is a very interesting question. How do I support a difficult manager? So you had a bit about managing your manager's expectations in order to further progress in your career here in Canada. So if you have an especially difficult manager, boss, supervisor, I'm looking at Sarah, no, I'm just kidding. But if you have that, how do you then work in that kind of environment?
So we did address a little bit about that, but sometimes I think having a difficult manager, it's very out of your control. It's not, and having to quit is actually your last resort, because it is very hard to find another job, right? And it's not worth it just because of one person. But just to say that one of the steps that you can take is just see if this will impact you in the next 5 months. Sometimes when you're starting a new job, you're with a new manager, you might not be used to their management style. So just give it a few weeks first. Don't make such quick judgments, and just see how you guys both work together. If after, say, 3 or 4 weeks, it's still like that, that's when I would say have a meeting with him or her and really at least ask more questions, clarification, and just really understand in their head what was behind, what they said or why they do the things that they do. Sometimes it doesn't work, and your manager actually does not improve, and it's just a relationship. But the important thing is just to focus on your task. Always make sure you meet all your competencies, you do everything that you're supposed to do, and there's nothing that is against you. So if anything, just focus on your task and then go home and de-stress. Work out, eat food. There's always ice cream as well. And worst case scenario, then I would say you may want to look for another job and then resign. Okay, so that is still an option.
Yep. Something else that can help is if you identify what matters most to your manager and demonstrate to the manager that you're trying to further their goals, whatever those goals might be.
Yeah.
How do I deal with office gossip?
So don't get involved.
Yeah, no.
Just don't get involved. That's all I can say. Although sometimes you are trying to fit in and you feel that that may be building relationships in the workplace, you're not. You know, and if you're with people that are gossiping about others, they're most likely gossiping about you as well. And if you are thinking about moving up in your organization, you do not want to have, again, people saying bad things about you and having a bad reputation. So if there's office gossip, then I would even suggest taking a walk outside or going somewhere else and not being involved and stay very neutral.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Yes.
What's the best way to respond to criticism, whether that's from your supervisor, whether that's from your colleagues, whether that's from a customer? How is the best way to respond to that?
I think you smile. Start with a smile and breathe. Because our immediate reaction is to get defensive often, and just calm yourself down and just go, okay, I'm going to listen to this. And know that you don't have to respond in that moment, right? It's perfectly acceptable to say, you know, thank you for sharing this with me, and I'd like to go away and think about this and come back to you and respond at a time when I've had a chance to think about it a little bit. But one of the things that was in Rebecca's presentation that I think is so important is how coachable are you? Employers tell us over and over again they're looking for people who are coachable. And that means you're willing and able to take feedback, even if it's quote-unquote negative feedback or corrective feedback. You know, it doesn't matter how qualified you are and how talented you are, but if the employer is finding it difficult to get you to do it the way they do it, if you're not coachable, they're not going to keep you past probation. So smile, breathe, ask for time if you need it, and then try to understand why they want you to do it that way. What's motivating this critique? Those would be my suggestions. Rebecca, you work with employers. What would you say?
Yeah, I would actually just echo what you said. I think that is very applicable, and just being flexible and hearing new ideas.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Final question for the day, and thank you again to the both of you for being very generous and also being so expert about all of this. The final question is, what's the best way, and it's kind of related to that gossip question, I think, for me at least, it's what's the best way to socialize with colleagues at work? What is considered appropriate and what is not considered appropriate in a Canadian workplace?
So socializing at work means a lot of different things. It could be having lunch, it could be having coffee, it could be having participating in a networking event afterwards, or going for a drink after work as well. So all those things are very appropriate, but the most important thing is you want to make sure that you get your work done first before you just participate in these activities, especially when you're during your probationary time. Some of the things that are not appropriate could include like having a drink with a coworker of the opposite sex, and actually being very late, maybe until 11 o'clock in the evening, and you're both alone. Although there may be just really nothing happening and you're just really building your relationships, you don't, again, want to increase the chances of gossip. So you want to make sure everything is during the day or within a reasonable time after work.
I would also recommend that you watch how the managers socialize. You know, your first couple of months in a new position, you should spend all of your time just watching very carefully what other people do and making little mental notes to yourself. I mean, how long are people taking for their lunch break? Are they socializing over lunch? You are expected to do some socializing because that's the way, that's the glue, right, that kind of helps people work smoothly together. So you may be expected to show up for a potluck lunch or join the baseball team or whatever it is. So even if you don't play baseball and they ask you to join the baseball team, you should be at least going to the games and rooting for the team, even if you aren't throwing the ball. There is a certain level of participation that is expected, but watch and see what the other people are doing and take your cues from management.
For those of you joining us from India, substitute baseball with cricket.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Deirdre,
Yeah.
Rebecca, this has been very informative and fun. I hope it was fun for me as it was fun for you.
Yeah.